Hello everyone, it's Friday, September 27th. Welcome to Cleats by Dre. I'm Dre, let's talk some sports. Alright, welcome. Just some lighter intro music to cheer you up. Remind you it's Friday. We're talking about sports. It's fun, it's light. Today we're going to go a little deeper into the underworkings, the behind the scenes, the volatility of the number 2 watched sport in America. That's college football. A whole slew of news this past week with player opt-outs, in particular one for Matthew Sluka, starting quarterback of UNLV, who has opted out for the rest of his season, even though he's starting and the team's undefeated at 3-0 with a shot at the playoffs. We'll talk about his situation, what's going on with college football with NIL, name, image, likeness, as well as unlimited transfers, and make some suggestions for where I'd like to see it go. But first, quick 1-minute recaps on what's happening with each of our teams that we care about here. First, last night, the Giants and the Cowboys. Cowboys 20, Giants 15. What can be said about the Giants that hasn't already been said about oatmeal? Yes, oatmeal. The food. Bland. Never really meets your expectations. You kind of just go through the motions when you're eating it. You can try to add some fun fruit, maybe brown sugar to it, but at the end of the day, it's not going to win you a morning. It's oatmeal. Yeah, the Giants, the offense looked okay. Moved the ball. Hey, we have a kicker. That's good after what happened a couple weeks ago. 5 field goals. But look, this offense still not good enough. Whether it's not effective enough and Daniel Jones, good completion rate, his receivers had a bunch of drops. He couldn't move the ball effectively downfield. Did any throws go into the end zone? Did we challenge them at all? Not effective enough or not aggressive enough. Dable. What happened to that year 1 Dable? The first game ever against the Titans, going for 2. In a game where you're the underdog. The Giants are always going to be the underdog until they're not. You got to be more aggressive. You got to try. Go for it. 4th and 3 in the goal line in the first quarter. Things like that. Giants are also, on offense, they're just not special enough. Wan'Dale Robinson, former second-round pick, I believe, or was he a first-round pick? The wide receiver, he's going to get a lot of attention with as much attention that Malik Neighbors gets. I almost called Neighbors Hakeem Nicks. That kind of similar body type. But Neighbors is fantastic. But Robinson, 15 targets or so and getting like 70, 80 yards? He's running third down plays short of the marker. He's not a big enough frame. He's very replaceable, and that's a key position. Imagine if you had Keenan Allen getting those catches. So they're just not special enough across the board. The tight end room is terrible. I think they have more holding penalties than catches so far. Unfortunately, on defense, the cornerback depth exploded a little bit last night. Unfortunately, Adoree Jackson out, Drew Phillips, the rookie, out. CeeDee Lamb made enough plays, right? And he's a difference maker. The defensive line wasn't special enough. Got to Dak a couple times. They were good enough, but the combination of like a bland offense and not a good enough defense. Look, the Cowboys are bad. The Cowboys are not good. Dominated by the Ravens last week. Dominated by the Saints 2 weeks ago. I don't think the Cowboys are making the playoffs this year. So these are not the same old Cowboys, but still, that game never really felt like it was in doubt, which is crazy to say. It feels like we're on our way again to 6-11, 7-10, which I think is the middle disaster, right? I talked about at the start of the year. The key thing, get these guys, the important building blocks, get them right, get them established. And Daniel needs to be replaced at some point. Even if he's just playing okay at $40 million a year, that's just not good enough. Next, baseball a little bit. The Mets. The Mets Braves scheduling debacle this week. Geez, you couldn't see the weather coming. We have sophisticated programs for that. So whether it was the stubbornness of the Braves who didn't want to kind of give up the gate revenue and move it to a neutral site, or didn't want to think through having a Monday game, and really the fault of MLB themselves. Like, what's the point of having a commissioner if he can't step in and make these decisions? So both these teams are set up, the Mets and the Braves. We're likely to have to play some kind of doubleheader on Monday before then flying out maybe to San Diego on Monday. It's just a mess, and I really don't feel like analyzing it too much because it's just a mess. So I'm excited. Big weekend of baseball coming up. Mets and the Brewers. It's all in front of them. Let's have some fun with it. A lot's going to change day by day. It's been a break the last couple of days, but really looking forward to watching some Mets games, and we'll definitely be talking about it over the next week. On the Yankees side, right? The Yankees clinched. They clinched a division last night against the Orioles. And look, it's no more excuses anymore for the Yankees in the playoffs. There's no giants out there. There's no formidable teams. It could be them. The pitching has to hold up. Cole has to come through. Judge and Soto have to be dominant. And really don't want to see holes in that lineup, whether it's Rizzo. Interesting whether they go with Dominguez in left or Verdugo. Dominguez's defense could be a problem. They should have brought him up earlier. They can do it, though. The Yankees can win it all. I'll be watching them closely in the playoffs. We won't do a recap, but we'll do a little teeny preview. Notre Dame. They have a big game on Saturday against Louisville. Two ranked teams, both 15th and 16th, in a 12-team playoff. These are big games. And this is a revenge game for the Irish, right? Honestly, last year, Notre Dame went into Louisville. I think they just had the one loss. They just had the one Ohio State loss. They were very viable for the playoffs still. And they got whooped. That wasn't a close game. I mean, we had heard about Sam Hartman's struggles against Louisville when he was at Wake. And now we have Riley Leonard's struggles against Louisville. He was 0-2 against Louisville at Duke. And look, I think it's weird. Some people would say, yeah, good we got Louisville again this year. I don't think it's a good thing that when a team whoops you like that you see them so soon the next year. Because they still got some stuff on some of the guys. They still have some of the scouting edge. So I'm definitely nervous about this game. And then you add in, Louisville's strength is on defense in the front seven. They're number 7 nationally in tackles for loss. And we don't really exploit the secondary, right? That's not exactly something that Riley's really starting to do. But what I'll say is Freeman, he's gotten the team up for big home games. Whether it was Clemson year 1, whether it was USC last year, even Ohio State last year, the team was ready for that. And I think this is another ceiling game for Freeman. I think he gets them up. This is almost like a rivalry game with Louisville at this point, what they did to us last year. I do expect the team to be up for it. I expect them to win and cover, even if it's at 6.5. I'll put my trust. Here's a nickname, right? Let's come up with nicknames for this running attack. I talk about they can't pass, but they can run. Let's call it the Incorporated Ground Trio of LLP. Leonard, Love, and Price. LLP. And I think they'll, the season average of 7 yards per carry. That's a big deal. I think they'll keep that going. So I'm looking forward to that. Of course, that game's going to be on Peacock, folks. It's streaming. Another topic that we talk about. So get your Peacock subscription up Saturday, 3:30. Okay, now let's stick with college football. College football has been on a volatile path lately. It's really in the direction of player empowerment, which I believe is a good thing, but it's wholly unregulated and unorganized and headline-making comical. Let me say first, I don't want to litigate the facts with this Matthew Sluka story. It's a he said, she said, and maybe that's the ultimate problem. And since Sluka is or was a QB for UNLV, who, by the way, he hails from 10 minutes where I grew up in Locust Valley, New York, 2 state titles at Kellenberg. Okay, but since it's from Vegas, UNLV, let's take the help of ChatGPT to tell this in a Las Vegas style. Story time. In the neon-drenched city of sin, where fortunes are made and lost on a roll of the dice. A tale of greed and betrayal unfolded that would shake the very foundations of college football. Matthew Sluka, a quarterback with golden arm and silver tongue, arrived in Las Vegas from Holy Cross with dreams of gridiron glory. An assistant coach of the UNLV Rebels, hungry for success, lured him with whispers of a $100,000 payday, a promise as enticing as a royal flush. But Vegas, she's a fickle mistress. As the Rebels soared to a 3-0 record, Sluka's pockets remained as empty as a busted gambler's. The promised riches vanished like a mirage in the desert heat. Enter Marcus Cromartie, Sluka's agent, a smooth operator with connections deeper than the Hoover Dam. He started asking questions, making waves. The kind of waves that make casino bosses nervous. UNLV's brass, their faces as stony as the nearby Red Rock Canyon, claimed ignorance. "We don't know nothing about no $100,000, they said, offering a measly $12,000 instead. Chump change in this high-stakes game. Sluka, feeling the sting of betrayal sharper than a stiletto heel, made a bold move. He walked away from the table, preserving his eligibility like a wise gambler cutting his losses. The news hit the strip harder than a jackpot siren. Fans were stunned, bookies scrambled, and the NCAA suits started sweating through their tailored jackets. As the dust settled on the Las Vegas Boulevard, one thing became clear. In the Wild West of NIL deals, there are no rules, only winners and losers. And Matthew Sluka, he wasn't about to be the sucker at the table. The house always wins, they say. But sometimes, just sometimes, a player flips the script and walks away with his future intact, leaving nothing but questions and whispers in smoke-filled backrooms. And scene. So, yeah, a little bit of fun. But basically, if you didn't get your drift, right, Sluka, transferred from Holy Cross. He's been starting this year for UNLV. Apparently, in his recruitment, an assistant coach had promised $100,000. It never came. So Sluka's playing out the start of the year. UNLV's beats Kansas, decent team. They beat Houston, another decent team. 2 teams in the Big 12. They beat Utah Tech. Wait, isn't that an oxymoron, Utah Tech? Sorry, Roper. Anyway, Utah Tech. The funniest part here, though, Sluka's kind of mid. He's kind of not good. 44% completion rate. 6.5 yards per carry. The team is 117th in the country in yards per game. He's like a homeless man's Riley Leonard. Let's face it, if it's pay for play, UNLV don't want to pay for that play. So that adds to the intrigue here. But the team is, one group of 5 team. One team from one of the lesser conferences does make the 12-team playoff. And with UNLV's credentials so far, they could be in it. So this is a team with possibilities to win a championship. Not realistic, but possibilities. And it's funny, too, UNLV is extra dug in here. Circa Resort and Casino actually offered $100,000 to keep Sluka at the school, and the school said no. So it's just comical college football right now. But let's back up for a little bit of background before we come back to this story. Right, for those that aren't as familiar with college football, there are 2 major developments over the last 3 to 4 years. It's really NIL, which is name, image, and likeness, and then the unlimited transfers rule. Now, for over a century, really since 1869, college football operated under strict amateurism rules. Right? Players really get the education, you could get a scholarship, the education, maybe a stipend, and that's it. Meanwhile, in the really started in the 90s probably, in the early 2000s, mid-2000s, as all sports got commercialized and schools started making money, bowl games and bowl commissioners, everyone was making money except for the players. And so I know I was an advocate for players getting something more than what they have today. And so what happened in June 30th, 2021, due to pressure from lawsuits, the NCAA adopted an interim NIL policy, suspending previous rules prohibiting athletes from profiting on their NIL. I mean, there are past Heisman winners that have been suspended for just getting paid slightly for autographs. Not anymore. In July 2021, the new era officially began. Athletes were able to sign endorsement deals, make paid appearances, and monetize their social media presence. And really in the last few years since then, a wave of endorsements have followed. Shoe deals, local business partnerships, paid social media posts. On its surface, NIL, name, image, likeness, is not pay for play, right? It's about endorsement, being able to use your name, image, or likeness, kind of like Olympic athletes can, to make some money for yourself. But it is pay for play. There's so many easy ways for boosters and collectives and things to get around and just say, yeah, this guy made an appearance, or he's a spokesperson, and the millions of dollars from boosters, from fans. There are collectives that are doing crowdsourcing from fans to help pay, and the money is flooded in to try to, get a player. And good, I say good for the players. Good that they're getting more of a share. Just so unregulated. The NCAA, for its part, they've tried to crack down on collectives that are doing the pay for play, but there are lawsuits against the NCAA from the state of Tennessee, Virginia. Other states have jumped in, and they recently won an injunction against the NCAA as basically saying any crackdown they're trying to do is violating the rights of the players to make money. So the NCAA stepped back. The NCAA is powerless here. It really is in college football. So it's not going to provide the regulation and the kind of like structure that's needed. It's got to be the conferences or the universities or just some kind of entity. And so the NIL is one part of this, right? So Sluka is having a disagreement as to how much money was promised to him. There wasn't a contract, and he's saying, I'm not playing anymore. But also, I think in the vein also of player empowerment, there used to be a mandatory 1-year redshirt waiting period where you have to sit out a year. If you transfer, you have to sit out a year. That's gone as of a few years ago too. So players can play right away the next year. So a threat like Sluka makes, saying, you're not paying me, so I'm gonna, and the thing with redshirting is in like a 12-game season, 4 games in, if you decide to redshirt at that point, you can then preserve that year of eligibility. And so he's saying, I'm gonna go play somewhere else next year, and someone's gonna give me a contract. So those two things, which are good for player empowerment, when you combine them and you don't have structure, it just leads to chaos like this. So why does this matter? Why does this story, Sluka's in particular, sting a bit as a fan? For one, we're not used to this. We're not used to seeing starting players on teams with somewhat serious playoff aspirations just sitting out, giving up on the season. In the NFL, imagine if a starting quarterback initiated a holdout in the middle of the year as a starter. Unheard of. In Major League Baseball, imagine if a star first baseman in Queens sat out starting in June the rest of the year to stay healthy for his free agent year. Could you imagine? In the NBA, imagine a star point guard in Brooklyn sitting out nearly a whole year to protest vaccination policies. Okay, forget that one. Let's move on. Look, we as fans, we care most of all about winning. We want championships. We want to feel like we're the best. Our team's the best. We want our players to feel and act the same way too. And when something like this hits, it just registers like a glitch in our matrix. In college football, I think there's 3 groups of fans. One, the make it like it was, right? Tier 1. Why do we even have NIL and unlimited transfers? These athletes get a college education. That's their compensation. Why do we even have all this business? I like how it used to be. Okay, Grandpa. Tier 2, the good with NIL crew, right? Seems fair. You tolerate transfer portals as the least bad of different solutions. Early red shirts could be smart by players if they're not getting playing time. But these fans, they think there should be more regulation overall. Because situations like the Sluka one, especially crazy. Tier 3 is the players can do whatever they want. Free market. Schools are raking billions still. Who knows? Maybe next week, Sluka would have gotten cut with his 43% completion rate. Without any repercussions. Who knows? Maybe it's a debilitating injury. Do you, player, get yours? I think Tier 2 is where most of the fans are. It's where I am mostly. I do dip my toes into Tier 3 occasionally. But most of all, I just want a kind of homeostasis and equilibrium when it comes to the business of sports. I want stability so coaches and GMs can set up their strategies, teams can have cohesion, players can have chemistry, and the The product on the field is fun to watch. Fans can get to know the players. Books can confidently set lines, etc. I don't like it when a starting quarterback for a 3-0 team feels he needs to call it quits on a season. Overall, the difference between those Tier 2 and Tier 3 fans, I think in Tier 2 you can accept it more when a player redshirts during a season to transfer when it comes to playing time not being met. Like a Bear Alexander at USC, even Sluka's teammate this past week, running back Michael Allen, did that. Or Jaden Mickey at Notre Dame, our third cornerback. In Mickey's case especially, he lost his mother to cancer back in December. You can't do anything but root for that kind of kid. Guys deserve opportunities and playing time, but it's harder to accept when it's about money, right? Something about money makes us feel a little uneasy. But let's look at this situation. An assistant coach who might be on his 7th school in 9 years, right? Fighting and clawing to keep his job. Offers a kid on the phone call $100K. Money that he's not going to produce and offer up. That his employer and school's not producing. That somewhere some booster or mysterious collective might produce. Keep in mind, UNLV lost their Mountain West Conference Freshman of the Year quarterback to USC this past year. That started the frenzy, in the words of their head coach, Barry Odom, to CBS Sports. We just went all in on every QB that was in the portal. Is the assistant coach at fault, given the current setup? I don't think so. How about Sluka? Is he at fault? He thought he was getting $100K. He probably asked repeatedly for it. Maybe he tried to be a good soldier. Put his head down, learn the playbook, meet the boys, lead the boys, hang out with some co-eds, hit the Vegas Strip, win some games. But he faced a deadline here. He had one last chance to kind of keep his eligibility, get paid next year. Football lives are short. He wants to recoup some money. Is he at fault? No. And UNLV or the boosters? They don't have to stand behind an assistant coach's potentially unsanctioned offer. Especially if quarterback has a 43% completion percentage and the offense is 117th in the country. Especially if UNLV has bigger things to think about right now, like rejecting overtures to join the Pac-12 2.0. I can't hold them at fault either. So I'm not going to cry outrage at any one actor here. Outrage directed at the system, man, the system. So what should be done? I'll call back to an article I saw in February from Clay Travis. Right, Clay Travis of Outkick the Coverage on Fox. Trust me, there's lots of things I don't agree with and don't align with on Clay. It could be politics. By the way, that it's okay to not agree with someone about things like politics, but find agreement in other spots of life. And I like what he wrote here about sports. I think he has a good vision here. He published an article in February called "The Big Ten and SEC Should Join Forces and Go for Profit." His key thesis here was the NCAA really has no power in college football. It's kind of up to the conferences and schools to legislate, and really just having the whole entity go for profit more than it is today. Of course, could make more money for everyone involved, but could provide that kind of structure stability that I think as fans we're hoping for. So some critical points I agree with that he has is, first, he makes the point that college football's media rights are woefully undervalued. The NFL commands $11.5 billion a year in TV rights. College football conferences together command roughly $2.5 billion a year. That's like 20% of the NFL. Estimates really say that the college football gets between 25 to 50% of unique viewership that the NFL does. And we talked about, recently the NBA's deal and how big it was. The $76 billion over 11 years. Well, the NFL is in for a much bigger payout the next time that comes up in a couple of years based on what the NBA got. So believe you me, college football schools, they're still leaving money on the table. Right? They don't bundle enough. There's that word, right? They don't, each conference does its own thing. Lots of money out there. Lots of money still to be made. Second, I think the critical point for this topic, until players are employees, and these are Clay's words, until players are employees and able to negotiate a collective bargaining agreement, there can be no end to antitrust lawsuits against the NCAA or any governing entity. So I'll read more from Clay here, right? college football players have to become employees and negotiate a collective bargaining agreement across multiple leagues. The SEC and Big Ten, for instance. A CBA, because it is bargained for, has an exemption to antitrust law. That's how NFL and NBA teams, for instance, get away with capping the amount they pay players. That would be determined by the negotiations, but it could guarantee, for instance, all 85 scholarship players a set salary payment. In exchange, players would likely give up perpetual free agency in the transfer portal. So if, this is now me, right? If collective bargaining is how we get to contracts, then good. Because this he said, she said with Sluka disaster happened, it probably happens all over the country. And it's going to keep happening given the chaos. Contracts leave no doubts, right? That's the benefit of contracts. They provide stability to the system. And look, I don't want to debate the specifics of contract structure here. I think it's wise to have templates and maybe a scale like the professional leagues have, just to make things as simple as possible for the schools. I mean, really, you can make a case for minimum contracts at 3 years, at 2 years, at 1 year, but we need them. Good college coaches are going to keep leaving for the NFL if this system doesn't get any easier for them to manage. And on the flip side, there are quite a number of players that are pushed into the transfer portal too. I was talking to my buddy, both James and Mike, right, our Notre Dame reviewers, right? They were making the point that, lots of players get pushed into the transfer portal, right? They get told that they're being cut. Contracts to protect them too. So I think contracts is a viable way here. But is anyone ready for an even crazier idea? Thought experiment? A what if? An art of the possible? As I used to say in my consulting days. So Clay goes on to suggest that college teams get purchased. Basically to start operating in the way that would bring stability to college football. Athletic departments are not set up to operate like this. They're not set up to negotiate collective bargaining agreements. Clay suggests the whole system goes for profit, and the league would become the second most valuable league in professional sports. He suggests private equity investment. We've already seen that in the NFL. Or like a Fox and a Disney and ESPN. So much of the money is media rights anyway. I'll add in Amazon or Apple, right? We know all these players, if they want rights, why don't they just buy the whole thing, buy the whole deal? And basically, we could figure, financial, analysts could figure out ways to distribute payments to the schools, go right to their endowment funds, or it could be annual payments. Now, of course, in this system, this is me talking, right? You 100% need to keep the school names. You keep the uniforms, the stadiums. These are invaluable brand attachés you don't lose. Look, it's a wild concept, but why not? Haven't we learned universities and conferences? They're after one thing more than anything else. It's money. But here, my thought experiment goes even one step further. What if the NFL and college football merged? Or there was an acquisition? Or joint venture, whatever, with private equity facilitating? What if you vertically integrated the leagues? What if you aligned each NFL team with 2 schools? The NFL franchise with its 2 partner schools collaborated on recruiting and player development. The NFL draft basically becomes for high school players. Recruiting's kind of gone. Trades are allowed. You could even think of a transfer market and allow a little bit of player power too. You probably hate me right now, or you might be thinking, well, while you're thinking, with the help of AI, I went ahead and did it, because I have an imagination like a 7-year-old when it comes to these things. 32 NFL teams, 64 college teams, ready, set, go. In the AFC East, right, the Buffalo Bills, well, they get Syracuse and probably the University of Buffalo. Miami Dolphins, well, they get University of Miami and give them UCF. New England Patriots get Boston College, obviously, and because the Northeast is kind of weak on teams, they get UMass. The New York Jets, Rutgers, we'll give them Rutgers. And because the way the math figures out, it's not too even, we'll give them BYU, right? Give them, because I think there's still some maybe Zach Wilson fans out there. AFC North, we'll go Baltimore Ravens get Maryland and Virginia Tech. The Bengals get Cincinnati and Louisville. The Browns get Ohio State and Kentucky. Steelers in Pittsburgh get Pitt and West Virginia. Lines up pretty evenly. AFC South, the Houston Texans get Texas A&M and University of Houston. The Colts get Purdue and Indiana. The Jaguars get Florida State and South Carolina. The Tennessee Titans get the Tennessee Vols and Vanderbilt. Pretty nice. Notice I'm focusing geographically here. AFC West, the Broncos get Colorado and Nebraska. The Chiefs get Kansas State and Missouri. The Raiders out of Las Vegas now get Utah and UNLV. And the Los Angeles Chargers get USC and San Diego State. Tie back to San Diego. NFC East, the Dallas Cowboys get Texas and Oklahoma. That doesn't seem fair, but we'll go with it. The Giants, well, they get Notre Dame and Duke. And don't ask me questions as to why. The Philadelphia Eagles get Penn State and Temple. The Commanders of Washington get Virginia and NC State. In NFC North, the Bears, Northwestern Illinois. The Lions get Michigan and Michigan State. The Packers get Wisconsin and Iowa. The Vikings get Minnesota and Iowa State, though they actually might want North Dakota State. In the NFC South, it gets kind of interesting here as we mix up the SEC teams. The Falcons get Georgia and Alabama. That doesn't seem fair, but geographically speaking. The Panthers get Clemson and North Carolina. The Saints get LSU and Ole Miss. The Bucs of Tampa Bay get Florida, the Gators, and USF. And in the NFC West, the Cardinals get Arizona State and Arizona. The Rams get UCLA and Cal. The Niners get Stanford and Fresno State. The Seahawks get Washington and Oregon. Look, there's actually some big teams left out, right? We didn't put Oklahoma State in there. We didn't put Mississippi State, Texas Tech, Arkansas, Baylor, just how it works out. And look, that exercise probably took me way too long. It was fun, though. So look, I'm having fun, right? But one clear benefit of this model, let the NFL teams start molding their developmental pipelines earlier. You know, we see the product of the NFL lately, and it's like, geez, you can't. The first few weeks, offenses can't complete passes. It looks out of sync. We never seem to have enough good quarterbacks in. You know, in baseball, I do think teams benefit from getting to mold their style from earlier on. Additionally, maybe more high school homegrown players want to stay close to home, both for school and then for their NFL team. That would be kind of cool. But look, I'm having fun. Why wouldn't it work? You know, for one, I don't like the idea of call-ups and call-downs happening like in baseball, right? That would lose too much of the essence of college football because college football is big on its own. You know, we don't need 35-year-old retreads like Tyrod Taylor being sent down to start for Rutgers. We don't need that. And look, let's be real. Everyone's too risk-averse for something like this anyway. Schools would never give up autonomy, right? There's a popular belief with fans and people close to college football that it's a better product than the NFL. They might be right. You can't be subservient to it. You know, can you set it up where like it's not like a minor league system, but it's just like a partnership? Because I think one of the benefits, right, and I didn't talk about this before, one of the benefits, if you're going to start doing collective bargaining and all these agreements, colleges and athletic departments aren't really set up for that. They're starting to hire some general managers. You know who is set up for that? NFL organizations. Kind of pool together, right? Pool together, you know, all the resources and the planning and the salary cap experts and so on. The other reason it might work, what talks at the end of the day? It's money. If this is the way to get more money to bundle, I think college will listen to anything. Okay, thought experiment done. Look, we're trying to fix college football here with sensical ideas, right? Contracts. Contracts is probably the best recommendation. Or wild ideas. Pairings with NFL teams. But really some fans, right? A fourth tier outside of my tiers. Or this tier runs across all three. They don't think we need to do anything. They embrace the crazy of college football. College football, you know, not everything has to be logical in this world. It can be fun. So let's end with asking the question, do we need to fix it? Does everything in our world have to have stability and logic? Can a little crazy be a good thing? Possibly. I know I'll stay tuned in either way. All right, folks, thanks for listening. Have an awesome weekend. Please keep sharing out to people as we try to grow this. Share this episode. Give it a rating and review on Apple or Spotify, and take care. Have a great weekend.